Hi, everybody. Mike from Ciberspring here. A few weeks ago, I was honored to speak at the Sitecore Symposium. And like most tech conferences nowadays, it's centered primarily on AI, right? And while really cool, it was one of the conversations I got into more often than not was around, making the case, right? There's all this hype out there about what AI can do, what the impact it could have would be, and all these types of things. But how do I make the case to my organization, to my boss, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about making the case for agentic ops to you, the marketing manager here, right? You are the person that actually logs into all the systems. You're the one who builds the stuff, right? You're the one who has to deal with the 8 to 10 different stakeholders, giving you all these different tasks and whatnot, right? So how do you actually make the case to make your life easier? That's what this conversation will be about today. All right, and I'm going to start this on a pretty bold statement, right? One that I hold personally dear and will go to my grave saying, right? Which is execution is more important than ideas. I've said it. I say it again. Execution is more important than ideas. My opinion here is that you could have great ideas, but if you have mediocre execution, your ideas are meaningless, right? It's probably more embarrassing than not because you're never going to get your ideas fully realized. That being said, if you have phenomenal execution, you could have mediocre ideas and you're just going to be pumping them out like crazy. And eventually your execution will make up for your lack of amazing ideas. So my opinion is that execution will always beat ideas. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been in situations where people have come to me and been like, had a really good core idea. And you get into a room, you start talking about how you're going to execute upon the idea, and it takes an immediate left turn into, well, then we could do this, and we could do this, and what about these ideas and these ideas? And you're like sitting there being like, we do not have time to reinvent the business. We do not have time to do all of this. What we should be focusing on is how do we actually get the current idea over the finish line, right? How can we do that in increments, iterate upon that, get knowledge from the market and make it better and better and better, right? That's how we should be focused on things. You get in these scenarios where you have 18 different awesome ideas and you have a team of 3 and you're like, the one core idea that we started with was going to take the whole team and was going to be a stretch. Now we have all this other stuff and it's just bloat, right? And then what's the reality we look like there, right? Then in that case, our content velocity is collapsing, right? Our content velocity is already collapsing. 5 years ago, you could just do things. It was super fast, right? You were getting things done. Nowadays, it's actually taking longer, not shorter, right? Process and systems are probably the biggest hindrance to that. Why? Because they're too complex. You have processes that have multiple layers of approvals, and then with built-in, marketing compliance, legal compliance in there as well. And you're trying to explain the business rationale to certain marketing things to people, right? You have a cute meme going out the door, but you have some lawyer looking at it, not understanding why you want to go out with this cute cat meme. So, yeah, right. You have some process there too. Then you are the marketing ops manager. As the marketing ops manager, the other issue you have is what about all of the systems you work in, right? You have your CMS, you have your marketing automation, you have your analytics platform, you have all your social platforms, right? You have your ticketing platform, you have your creative platforms, you have your copy platforms, right? All of these different platforms that you need to know. And every platform is getting super advanced nowadays, right? So you have this level of complexity within each platform scaled out across 8+ platforms to do marketing, okay? So now you're sitting there and you and your team is seen as reactive, not proactive. You're seen as a bottleneck. And that is wild to me, right? You as the individual who's actually logging in, making these ideas a reality, producing and executing on them, working at breakneck speed because there's so many ideas, you're looked at as the bottleneck. And quite frankly, you are, right? Because you have 8 different ideas coming down to 3 to 4 people, right? And those ideas, single idea has how many different channels, how many different personas, how many different go-to-market plans, how many different products, right? So yeah, you are trying to push a lot through a small pipe. And at the same time, Everyone is seeing AI every time they log into anything. So the AI hype is real, right? I mean, every time I log into LinkedIn, I see, 10x, we're going to 10x this workforce, and look at the dramatic increase here. And if you don't have the tools, you have the same people giving you the ideas saying, I don't understand what's taking so long. I saw that, XYZ company was able to release content in half the time. And I don't have the tools. Let's get the tools, right? So that's where you're at. So the question here is, what do you actually need, right? Step back before you have the tools, before it's like the tools and all this stuff. Monday morning, what do you need, right? So the first thing you need is time savings, right? I just want time savings, right? Cut my production cycles down. It currently takes 2 weeks to, go from creative brief to design, from design to draft, from draft mockup, from draft mockup to production page, and production page to live, right? With review cycles in between each one. If I want to cut that down, 2 weeks, 1 week, ideally less, right? But 2 to 1, let's call that. It's literally half the time. So let's start there. One of the biggest ways we could do that, not just is in the execution and the building and the generating of the idea of the content, but also on the review and approval cycles. I think this goes very underestimated here. And this is what I spoke about at the Sitecore Symposium. If I can increase the likelihood that my content will get approved, I could dramatically improve my time to market. So what would take 3 to 4 cycles to get approved, right, which was turnarounds. That means I created something, round numbers, took me an hour to create it. I had to send it off for approval. That then gets sent back. Let's say that took another hour, right? So now we're up to 2 hours, but it got sent back with markups. Now maybe I can just make the changes. Maybe I have to meet with the person. Depends on how bad the markups are. Okay, that's more time, right? And then that loop just continues and continues and continues. If I can cut that loop down and one-shot it, that's going to save me a ton of time, right? And one of the biggest ways I can do to actually make that happen is having compliance at scale, right? So one of the biggest things there, is built-in brand guidelines, right? It is super important that your brand has a single presence when talking to the world, right? Consistent single presence is huge. That being said, if you have 15 minutes to make something go live, you have a giant Word document with all this stuff on it that you have to put on a page, and once or twice in this giant Word document is your brand there with an apostrophe S, and it's not supposed to be like that. You missed it, right? You're human. This is part of the problem, right? We're humans here. So you don't have built-in brand guidelines. You have to read it all. You have to think about it. You have to catch it as it goes, right? Then you have to clean it up. So think about the optics there for you as a marketing manager. Not only are you looked at as too slow, then on top of it, you're too slow, and then the quality of the work going out the door isn't on brand. Insane, right? So less cleanup. And then an important aspect here is accuracy to risk tolerance, right? Obviously, you want all your marketing to be compliant with the legal structure that you're doing business in, right? That being said, you want to make sure you're aligned with your company's individual risk tolerance. Some companies say, the law is here, our risk tolerance is here. We are not going to go anywhere near the law, right? Let's think of it like speeding, right? Like the speed limit is 65, but I am not going above 60. Not me, obviously, but maybe the company isn't going above 60, right? So you want to make sure your marketing is also in line with that risk tolerance, right? That's kind of where you want there. You just don't want to have that be too subjective, where you're doing way too much. So if you could have that compliance at scale and you have the time savings, what that opens up for you is this concept called creative leverage, capacity, right? I now have the capacity in my day to do other things, right? I'm doing less low impact work, monotonous work that makes me not want to come to work on Monday, right? I don't want to come to work on Monday, not because my manager's a monster. I don't want to come to work on Monday because I know that I'm going to log in and I'm going to be doing things that like just updating copy for hours, and I just don't want to do it, right? So this low impact work, it's just draining you, right? And then when you have this idea of creative leverage, capacity, you actually can get to the ideas and strategy, right? So now you're going back to that equation of execution over ideas, and you're flipping it, right? My execution's solid. Now if I have an opportunity to get rid of all the monotonous work that takes up 90, 100 plus of my day, I could actually get to some strategy and ideas, right? What you really can get to is this promised land of phase 2, right? I know you, like me, have been in all these projects. We're coming down to crunch time, and we're like, all right, we're going to make our MVP list. I'm going to cut half of the things in this backlog because I need to get it done more than get the whole thing, right? Like, that's just the way it is. Phase 2 is like my high school closet. I threw things in there that I never wanted to look at again. It's the promised land. We always get there. It's the next phase. Well, if I have leverage and I have time to get to the phase 2, right? I actually have time to get there in my day. Huge. Then on top of that, that's what you need in your day to day. What about emotionally? Just as human beings, what do you need emotionally, right? Less burnout, more momentum, right? You don't want it to be the Monday morning, the Wednesday hump day, or the Friday, and you're like, oh my God, I just want it to end, right? You want to feel momentum. You want to come in invigorated every day because you're doing something cool, right? You're doing something that would be cool to get out the door, right? In that, you want less battling, more building. The idea of accuracy to your review cycles, and you don't have this tense relationship with your stakeholders, your tense relationship with your reviewers, less of battling and more actually building together is ginormous, right? And you do that by being less reactive and more proactive. If you could go out there to your stakeholders and say to them, hey, what about this? Let's build this together. That's great, right? And it changes the entire environment that you work in, from one that's tense to battling and, oh my gosh, Mike is so slow, he's so behind, look at all of this, to one that's like, wow, we're getting things done and we are building as a team. That is huge, right? And you want to feel that way. You want to be able to take a breath, right? You want to be able to be like, hey, I commute into the office. I get into the office. I am sitting here. I would love to use the bathroom, but like it's just neck break, and I don't even know what lunch is, let alone taking a lunch break, right? You want to have some kind of sigh of relief here. So that's what you need. What do you want, right? What do you want to have to get to what you need, right? What you want is you want some agents. You want some AI that's going to execute your content tasks with very minimal human intervention, right? So you don't want it to execute every task, right? You were not there, right? But you want it to execute your content tasks with minimal, not no intervention, but just minimal intervention, right? You want to be able to come in there and say, what used to take me hours or half hour or something to do a single task now takes me less time, right? That's what you want, right? That alone will give you everything you need in your day. What are use cases we're talking about here? What you want, right? You want an AI agent that's going to enforce brand compliance in real time. It's going to look at that apostrophe S, see it in all the documents, and make sure it never goes out, right? It doesn't hit your desk. It doesn't hit the website. It doesn't hit social. It doesn't hit the emails, right? It's just not there. And you're not relying on a person to catch that every time, right? You want to auto-generate channel-specific variants, right? How many times you log into Workfront, Jira, whatever, right? And you get a great Figma file and creative brief for this cool campaign. And it's maybe a Figma file that's like an email, right? Maybe it's like an email or a web page, landing page, right? Okay, cool. What about all the other assets? Now, who's building that, right? That's your production cycles now. Right now it's like, okay, all right, let's go. We got to build the email out of this. We got to build all the social messages. We got to build the ad camp, right? Something that would auto generate that, save us a lot of time, right? The biggest one for me is this next one though. Low effort web updates. How many times, right? I had to log into the CMS to make low effort updates. Right. And from like cold, right? Meaning like, all right, I have to log in. I have to pull out my phone. I got an MFA. Oh my gosh, I left my phone upstairs. Now I got to leave my desk. All of these types of things. Just take it off my plate, right? I imagine a workflow where you get, instead of your current workflow of, hey, I get my ticket in Workfront. I look at the request. It's an easy one. Okay, I can execute this. Or, hey, this one's a little complex. Let me think about it. I got to, make sure it's right. Then, okay, I go look at the page. I see what needs to be changed. In this case, it's an update, right? So, okay, I got to update this page. I log into the CMS. I go in. I make the changes. I I save, I publish that to the pre-prod site. I look at that at the pre-prod site, make sure it's good. Depending on the update or the process, right? Maybe I can just publish it. Maybe I have to wait for a stakeholder to review it, right? And now, imagine I get that ticket in Workfront. I look it over and I'm like, yeah, okay. Sounds good. Let's make that change. I approve it, and an agent just goes into my CMS, makes a change, and then gives me the pre-prod link minutes later. I never log into the CMS. That would change everything for me personally. I would imagine what it would change for you. Instead of doing that, you're looking at the campaign briefs, seeing how to execute against them better, instead of logging in to make a copy update to a page in the CMS. That would just, to me, that alone would be exactly what I want and give me everything we talked about that I need. Next, localizing content, right? Just like you should put all your content in all the channels that your customers are, you should fish where the fish are, right? Same with localization. You should talk the language your customers talk in. You should not be talking in some other foreign language to them, right? Like, and I don't mean that in the sense of country languages. I mean that localized languages. You should be talking the vernacular and the lexicon of your customers to make sure you are resonating with them so that they want to build a relationship with you, right? And how do you do that? How do you do that at scale, right? I've been on sites where there's 20 plus languages and I've been on sites where there's 2, right? How do you do that at scale when you have thousands of pages and you're pumping out content all the time, right? And at scale, at speed. Having some agents in there, so once content gets approved, or maybe once content gets drafted, it's constantly in other languages, so it could be approved in those as well. That would be great, right? So these are just some use cases to hit that what I want, right? What I want is that agent that's going to execute some of these content tasks for me, minimal intervention. So I can look it over and approve it and not have to do all the grunt work. So now let's talk about how to sell this, okay? First thing you want to do is be tactical, right? The last thing you want in something like this is to fail, right? I know coming from Agile and stuff myself, right? Fail fast. Great idea, right? I love that. I love that when we're POCing things, maybe trying something experimental. But like the last bullet says here, this is not AI experimentation, right? This is operational efficiency. So the last thing I actually really want is to bite off more than I can chew. Sell this grand vision of like autonomous agents that are going to just do everything for me, do a fraction of that, have the entire project abandoned. Now it didn't work, so I don't have the tools, right? So now we're back to that scenario where I look reactive, not proactive, and all that stuff. In addition to that, I just sold a tool that didn't work, right? So the first thing you want to do is be tactical, okay? My advice here, different some other up there, it's like just start one place, right? Start one place. Second, speak the language of the audience, right? We're marketing people. This should be obvious. But so many times do I get into rooms with marketers who understand that there's 8 different customer personas, but don't understand that there's 5 or more different internal business personas. If you are talking to your VP of marketing who really cares about operational efficiency, you should be speaking in that language. If you're talking to your finance team, you should be speaking in that language. If you're talking to your business stakeholder, you should be speaking in that language. They care about different things. You should tell them about how this one thing will give them all of that stuff. And the last thing you want to do is you don't want to sell like an experiment. I want to try this thing. Yes, we're going to try a pilot program. We're going to try a pilot program for operational efficiency, not to get another cool, shiny tool in here. I don't know about you, marketing manager, but me as an ops person, I don't want another shiny tool. I have enough. I have enough shiny tools, and way too often am I being brought into some vendor demo that's like, hey, look at this shiny tool. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I could have been doing like work. And now while I'm sitting here, I'm having Slacks and team messages asking for status updates as I'm listening to a vendor pitch, right? Like, come on. So what we got to talk about is operational efficiency, not AI experimentation. Okay. So let's like role play this. I walk in, it's Monday morning here. You're probably not seeing it on Monday, but I'm recording this on Monday. Walk into the office. I see my manager, Amy. I beeline to my desk because I haven't had my first coffee yet, right? So I sit down, I have my coffee, I check my emails. Okay, cool, wonderful. I open Jira, look at all my tickets. Great, cool. And to procrastinate against doing any work, I'm going to go talk to Amy. Okay. I come in, knock on her door. Hey, Amy, got a few minutes to chat. Let's sit down and talk, right? How was your weekend? Mine was great. It's beautiful here in Florida. I live in the life, right? I hope you're enjoying cold New York. Yeah. So let's talk about the last few weeks. I know we're kind of tense. It's end of year, so we're really trying to pump out as much as possible. I know, Karen was on your back about getting that PR done. And I also know, that Linda was also on your back about getting that product page updated. I was really a pain, right? And at the same time, we had Jason just like going crazy about like making these page updates to this mess there was. I hear you, and I know I was I snapped at you, but you got to realize that these were coming all around, and I know the pressure you're getting is shielding me from the pressure I'm getting. We're all trying here, right? So what I want to talk about is maybe doing an AI pilot next year, right? I think that I could bring in one of these really cool agent tools like Radial or some of these other ones out there, and it could dramatically increase our workflow here. I know you've seen it online. I really think it's time we do this, right? I want to talk about, right, not the press release, but maybe we'll focus on that product update that Jason and Linda wanted to get done and how we can actually take that and make that super fast. All right. If you're down, I'd love to, contact an outside agency so they could bring in the experts and we could really set it up for success. So she's going to love that idea. Right. Obviously, genius idea, Mike. Let's do it. Right. Awesome. Right. But you really need to sell it appropriately. Right. What do I mean by that? First thing she's going to ask is, where are we going to start? Right. So you're going to start and you're going to pick one high friction workflow because you want to pick something that obviously the solution solves something, doesn't just, make your life faster, solve something high friction. If it solves something high friction, you're going to have more momentum to do more. Right? So you want to pick one high friction workflow. You want to set up some guardrails, right? You want to make sure that the process is very clear. You want to make sure that it's set up for success. And you want to make sure that everyone who is included in the old workflow is included in the new workflow. So there's proper guardrails there. Then you want to measure what actually matters, right? And by this, I don't just mean time to market, right? Maybe there are other things like review cycles. If I could take my review cycles from 3 to 1, maybe there are things like accuracy. Maybe they're like what matters to you. The way I would look at it is sit down. What are the things that either got escalated or did people ask about or do you see there in the last, it's November and this year in 2025, what was the biggest trend or biggest pattern, right? So let's role play that one out, right? So great idea, Mike. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to start here, right? Like, all right, let's get some platforms. Let's get a vendor in place. Let's get an agency to come in and help us do it. But where do you want to start? Like, help me sell it to my manager. Sure, right? I really think we start with the product updates, the press release updates, and all those types of things. The audience there might not be the best in tune to doing that. So I want to start with the product updates. I think there's a lot of high friction in there and high value, right? So I think if we could take that timeline dramatically down, I think we could have a lot of value in the market. And I think Linda and Jason are going to be so happy that we were able to get it done, right? That's what I think. So I think we start with the product updates. I think we specifically start with maybe product updates and new product page launches, right? Those two right there, huge. And what I really want to set in place, right, are these guardrails. So I want to make sure that both myself and the stakeholder reviews so that we have a nice reviewal process here. So this is why I think an outside agency to come in to help with the workflow would be nice, right? I just want to mirror our current workflow. I want to set up some guardrails, right? Something like 90% success and accuracy rate, something like that, because we can make the changes if it's close enough, right? To fine tune it. And here's what I was thinking, Amy, right? So currently, it takes us a little over an hour-ish to build a page, depending on complexity. But our round number sake here is like an hour, and then to make an update, we give it about a half hour, right? So I'm thinking if we can cut that in half in both scenarios, that's a win, right? So I'm hoping that I could take the page updates from 30 minutes to 15 minutes, and I'm hoping I could take the new pages from an hour to 30 minutes. right? So that's kind of what I'm hoping for to start. Obviously, you know, maybe we can get faster than that, but like I think that's a value add right there. And if we can hit that, I think with that KPI in place, we can keep moving forward. Obviously, she's going to love that idea, right? If you are able to get her in a scenario where you're now doing work at twice as fast, right? She looks good to her managers and her colleagues, right? So it's a win-win for everybody here. It kind of goes without saying, but like sometimes it's like, yeah, right? We could do work twice as fast. It's a good thing. So obviously, you know, she's going to say yes, right? Sign me up, Mike. Let's do it. Right. Let's get a good agency in place. Let's do an RFP, find some platforms and really hit it hard. Right. And with that baseline in place, you're going to measure what matters. You hit one workflow, then you could keep moving on to the next one. Right. You hit the new page updates or existing page update, new page builds. Then you can move on to the press releases. Then you continue to move on and you start tackling every single workflow as it goes. Right. If you need help identifying the workflows, diagnosing the workflows, or actually executing and implementing on the workflows, feel free to reach out. We'd love to help. But I really think this agentic operations in the new year will be a huge way for you as a marketing manager to change that culture in your company and that optics where your team looks like reactive, and give yourself and your team some breathing room and peace of mind.